Hello, I'm Keith Johnson. I'm a member of the Board Smart faculty, and today we're talking with Bob Conlin, who's the Secretary of the Wisconsin Department of Employee Trust Funds. That's the benefit side agency for the Wisconsin retirement system. Hi, Bob. We're glad to have you joining us today.
Glad to be here, Keith.
So can you just give us a little overview of what the Wisconsin retirement system is and who it serves and what programs it offers?
Yeah, so the Wisconsin retirement system is Wisconsin's statewide pension system. So we are available to cover all state and university employees and employees of almost every municipality in Wisconsin, as well as school districts and counties and villages and all that. The two notable exceptions are the city and county of Milwaukee, which have their own pension plan. But pretty much we have everyone else, about 257,000 active participants across the state of Wisconsin, 650,000 total participants overall, including retirees.
So how is the Wisconsin retirement system structured in terms of oversight of the benefits and investment responsibilities?
Yeah, so in the Wisconsin retirement system, ETF, as you kind of mentioned at the outset, is responsible for the administrative functions.
So you mentioned that you, as the secretary of the benefits agency, are a member of the investment agency board. Is that a statutory requirement, or is that just a traditional practice that the WRS has adopted?
Yeah, it's not a statutory requirement. The state of Wisconsin Investment Board, a series of statutory positions with certain experience requirements. One of those is an appointee of the Wisconsin Retirement Board, which is one of the oversight entities we have at ETF. But the Wisconsin Retirement Board is responsible for appointing a non-teacher participant to the state of Wisconsin Investment Board. And they have traditionally taken the view that it makes sense to have the secretary serve in that capacity. Brings with the benefits knowledge, the liability knowledge, and just a general better sense of how the system actually operates. And so my predecessors and I have all served on the state of Wisconsin Investment Board.
Well, that is a really interesting setup, that it is by tradition and culture and not by statute that there's that link between ETF and the investment board. Tell us a little bit about how some of the other main functions in terms of things like hiring of and working with the actuary, reporting on health and status of the system, and auditing. How are those kinds of things handled or coordinated between the two?
Yeah, so ETF, the Department of Employee Trust Funds, has primary responsibility in conjunction with the ETF board, which is the board that appoints me to this position and kind of is responsible for the day-to-day oversight of the administrative side of the Wisconsin retirement system. The statutes, in fact, say that the contribution rates shall be established by the actuary. There's really not a lot of wiggle room for the board to go in a different direction or anything like that. Contribution rates, annuity adjustments for our retirees, all of the assumptions and factors that go into determining benefits and funding really rest with the actuary, and we have an independent, third-party actuary that has been working with the system for a long time, and it's based on actuarial science as opposed to anything else, and I think that's a tribute to the foresight of the founders of the system, and has helped us stay relatively well funded for our entire existence.
Very, very, very interesting setup. What about audit types of issues and reporting issues? How are those coordinated or handled between the two agencies?
Yeah, so both ETF and the State of Wisconsin Investment Board have their own internal audit functions, which, you know, the biggest thing they do is focus on the issues unique to those entities. So our internal audit is looking at benefit calculations, looking at the risks we face here in paying the benefits and calculating the benefits and collecting the contributions. SWIB's internal audit is looking at things unique to SWIB, but then there are some overlapping areas, like making sure everything is working well in the finance handoffs when we're passing back and forth the money, the contributions that are coming in and the payments that are flowing out. Riding over top of all of that, the State of Wisconsin Legislative Audit Bureau, nonpartisan service agency of the state legislature, is really responsible for auditing most of what both agencies do. And so every year, every 2 years, they issue a large kind of a management audit of the things that we're both doing. It's separate, but they can also see the tie-ins between the two. So we have, I think, pretty comprehensive audit functions going on, both internally and then the higher level external audit function.
What about preparation of the annual financial report?
Yep.
How is that coordinated?
Yeah, so SWIB is responsible. They publish their list of investments and their investment return. They have some separate state funds that they invest. They are feeding, SWIB is feeding information into ETF in terms of schedule, list of investments and all that sort of thing that needs to be included in that. ETF, in addition to the WRS, also operates about 12 or 13 other fringe benefit programs for public employees throughout the state. Disability programs, life insurance, health insurance, and all that stuff gets folded into our CAFR. So when we say comprehensive annual financial report, it is comprehensive. It includes a lot of information that doesn't necessarily involve just SWIB stuff as well. So there's a bit of a coordination that goes on there to make sure we have the right information, but we are responsible for what everybody's looking for, which is the CAFR.
So how do communications with the fund participants and policy issues in interacting with the legislature and governor work? Is that coordinated between the two agencies, or is it split up?
We're getting benefit information out to members. SWIB is getting the investment information, all the, kind of the inside story stuff that people are often fascinated with on the investment side. So they're getting everything in one kind of one-stop shopping for us. We make that available in paper. We make that available electronically. We have, I think we both use Twitter to get our message out. We coordinate on press releases and things like that, because even though we're two separate entities, how SWIB performs on their investment affects our benefits. And so people are keenly interested in how SWIB does performance-wise. Our benefits, when we communicate things, a lot of what we put in ours, depending on SWIB investment performance, this will be your benefit or whatever. So there's a lot of give and take and a lot of sharing of information. So having that coordinated is something we've been working on over the last decade or so to make sure that our communications people speak to each other regularly. They have a communication plan going forward, but they have been working pretty seamlessly together, doing legislative visits, dealing with high-level issues, coordinating responses to inquiries and things like that. Again, even though we both have things that we're responsible for, we're able to kind of multiply the value there by them working together and making sure our messages are consistent, making sure they know, each of them knows what legislators they're talking to and what they're hearing and all that sort of thing. So it works pretty well. It's, I think, dependent a lot on the people involved, and we've got good people who communicate well with each other and work well with each other.
So Bob, is all of this communication and coordination done on a staff to staff level, or do the boards meet together occasionally? How does this all get put together?
With the State of Wisconsin Investment Board and with the executive director, CIO of SWIB, with the ETF and the retirement boards. We tend to have David Villa, who's the executive director and CIO, come in at least once every year, tell us how the year went, how things are going, what they see as challenges on the investment front. And they are, of course, willing to come in anytime, to have that conversation with the board, but we make sure we get it at least once a year. So one of the other things we do is the retirement boards have a couple of appointees to the State of Wisconsin Investment Board, including myself that I talked about before. We report back to the boards that appointed us, at least on an annual basis, and kind of let them know what's going on. And I keep the ETF board apprised of what's going on with SWIB in a monthly update that I give to them.
So it sounds like the membership from ETF, particularly with you on the board, and appointees from the ETF boards on the investment board are critical to coordinating all of this.
We can't afford to be operating in silos, and you have a consolidated system. It's important to have the communication so that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing, and vice versa. And it's really works best if they're kind of working in unison, get more bang for the buck. And on the back end, getting everybody a shared understanding of how our benefits work is a positive out of that. I think in a lot of investment shops for pension, so our investment people are not just institutional investors without clients. I mean, there's a real direct impact on our membership, and having this close coordination, I think, really benefits our members. SWIB investment staff know how they play a role in the health of the system and the financial health of our members. And I think that's an important component of what they do, so that they're not just off investing for the heck of it. It's, something that's really tangible to them.
So communication and coordination seem to be key themes that you've repeated to us. What do you think the biggest challenge or challenges are in operating a system with split boards?
So the communication, not that it's a challenge here, but if those things don't work well, I think those become challenges when they're working at separate cross purposes or whatever. I think I would sum that up as, finding a way to keep your eye on the collective ball. What is it that we're here for? What is it that we're supposed to be doing? And I think that's the challenge that executive directors, in my role and David's role face, is how do we keep everything pointing in the right direction to benefit our members, the participants in the system, being responsible for maintaining cost and controlling the cost of the system, you have to have some coordination on that, and I think that's a challenge. If you get into the siloed situation where the two sides or the two parties don't talk to each other, nothing good usually comes of that.
Well, Bob, as a last question, I'm curious. I know that you've had all of your experience basically with a split board system, but do you think that there are some advantages to having the investment and benefits functions divided between two agencies?
I think there are. I think it allows for certain, specialization, at least in the public space. For example, in Wisconsin, SWIB and staff kind of got carved out as a quasi-public entity. They have a little more authority budget-wise, pay-wise, that sort of thing. I think more systems across the country are realizing the value of a functioning kind of performance incentive program for investment staff. They're competing with private sector institutional investors. And so to compete for that talent, you need a robust compensation system that's often not found in a traditional state agency like ETF. So at least in Wisconsin, we get the advantage of that, able to continue having good returns, very competitive staff salaries, and I think that's a net positive. Plus that entity gets to focus more on what they do, as opposed to getting mixed up with everything else that an administrative agency would be responsible for.
Well, Bob, that is all very enlightening, and I'd like to thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. Viewers are encouraged to visit the BoardSmart website at boardsmart.com for other resources and information that is of use and value to public pension fund trustees and senior staff members. Thank you again, Bob.
Thanks, Keith.